Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're taking a fascinating journey into South Korea. We'll be looking at a whole range of sources.
Yeah, everything from family life and cultural shifts to, well, defense strategies, education history, even its global cultural impact.
The goal is really to pull out the key insights, right? To understand what makes South Korea tick today.
Exactly. We've got sociological studies, defense reports, historical stuff, tourism analysis, and, of course, explorations of the Korean wave.
So the mission for you listening is to get a pretty comprehensive, still digestible understanding of South Korea's, well, incredibly rapid changes, but also the things that have endured.
And maybe uncover some surprising facts and connections along the way, things you wouldn't necessarily link together.
Okay, let's dive in. First up, something pretty fundamental. The Korean family. Our sources show some, really dramatic shifts since the 1960s. A lot of it seems tied to economic development.
Oh, absolutely. That period saw massive industrialization, urbanization, people moving from rural areas to cities in huge numbers.
And that directly impacted family structure. You mentioned the traditional STEM family.
Right, the three-generation household, patrilineal, very traditional. Back in the 50s, that was like 31% of households.
Okay.
By 1990, plummeted down to just 10%.
Wow. So what replaced it?
Well, you saw the rise of the nuclear family, and interestingly, a lot of elderly couples remaining in rural areas while their kids moved to the cities.
And the size of families changed too, right?
Definitely. Average household size went from 5.7 back in 1960.
Big.
Yeah, down to 3.8 by 1990. And what's really striking is that the old difference between city families and countryside families in terms of size, it basically disappeared.
So more smaller households everywhere.
Yeah.
One or two generations, single-person households.
Exactly. It mirrors trends you see elsewhere with industrialization that move towards individualism.
But it wasn't just the structure, was it? Attitudes within the family shifted too.
For sure, take parental authority. In 1959, you had something like 43% of people saying kids should just obey parents, period.
Right.
By 1990, that dropped to under 19%. The majority, over 62%, felt it, depends on the
It's
situation.
a much more flexible view. And what about lineage? The importance of carrying on the family name.
That shifted too, though maybe with some more complexity. By 1990, you had almost 42% saying a male heir wasn't essential or a daughter could succeed.
Which is a big jump from 1959.
Huge jump. It was only about 22% back then. And things like accepting concubines just to get a male heir, that became far less common.
Okay, so lots of change. But the sources also say some traditional things held on quite strongly, like patriarchal elements.
Yes, that's a key point. Despite all these changes and women gaining ground in education and the economy, there was still this persistent deference expected from wives.
And a preference for sons.
Still there. In everyday family life, meals, clothing, even educational focus. It didn't just vanish.
So wives might have had more say, maybe in finances.
Yeah, their role in decision-making increased, especially money matters. But it was often still seen as, well, subordinate. So you have this mix, changing structures, evolving attitudes, but those deep Confucian roots of male authority were still influential.
Interesting tension. But did the core value of family itself erode? What about caring for parents?
That seems to have remained strong. Even with more nuclear families, many grown children still felt a strong obligation to care for their aging parents. The form changed, but maybe not the fundamental sense of family duty.
Right, that makes sense.
Okay, so let's pivot quite dramatically now.
Yeah, let's talk defense. South Korea's military transformation and its global role. We've got a defense policy report from late 2022
And it highlights a really interesting strategic shift, moving away from sheer numbers.
towards what they call smart defense, using advanced technology.
Exactly. There was a long-term plan announced in April 2022 focusing on securing core technologies, building more self-reliance.
And what are the key areas they're investing in?
We'll think battlefield awareness. That means things like military spy satellites, high-tech UAVs, drones, basically, and upgrading their command and control systems, the C4I stuff.
Kind of the eyes, ears, and brain of the operation.
Precisely. They're also boosting maritime power. New destroyers, submarines, patrol aircraft, advanced missiles, mine-clearing tech,
And in the air?
upgrades for their F-35s, developing their own fighter jet, the KFX, getting aerial refueling tankers, and crucially, cyber capabilities. They launched a national cybersecurity strategy back in 2019.
So it's a broad technological push. Are they putting serious money behind it?
Oh, yeah. The share of the defense budget going to force enhancement rose from about 30% in 2017 to over 33% in 2020. with more increases planned. They're focusing R&D on really cutting-edge stuff: stealth radar, hypersonic missiles, autonomous robots, satellite systems, missile defense.
Long-range weapons, too, I see.
Right. It's about future-proofing their military and positioning themselves strategically.
And this isn't just happening in isolation, is it? They're cooperating more internationally.
Definitely. More cooperation with European countries, which is relatively new.
Yeah.
And they've become a major arms exporter, 8th largest globally now.
Wow. And what about alliances?
Well, the bedrock is still the treaty with the U.S. from 1953. But they've built strong ties with Japan, despite historical tensions. They have an agreement on sharing classified military info from 2016.
Okay.
And partnerships with Australia, New Zealand, even NATO as a partner across the globe, plus ASEAN. And they have agreements to share classified military intel with numerous other nations. It's a growing network.
So a real shift towards a tech-heavy, globally connected defense posture.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's shift gears again. Thinking about South Korea in the context of, well, empire. It's a complex term.
It is. The source we looked at defines it broadly, not just territorial control, but also hegemonic influence, whether land-based or sea-based.
It gives historical examples, right? Rome, Persia, Mongols, British Empire.
Yeah, it sets a broad historical stage. And then it touches on the post-World War II era, the idea of Pax Americana.
And the debate about whether the U.S. qualifies as an empire, sometimes called that empire by invitation due to its alliances.
Right. It even mentions John Foster Dulles and his Cold War ideas, like the knockout blow doctrine.
The source also links empire building historically to how European states developed and expanded overseas.
Which provides important context when we think about South Korea's own history.
Exactly. Its experience being influenced by China and, of course, the Japanese colonial period. That history definitely shapes modern perspectives.
Which leads us neatly into looking at a specific piece of that history, the ancient kingdom of Goguryeo.
Right. Our historical sources show it was a pretty significant early state, and they focused on education early on.
Remarkably early, they established a national Confucian academy, the Taihak, way back in 372 AD.
First in Korea.
Believed to be, yes, heavily influenced by China's Eastern Jin dynasty. Its main purpose was training government officials.
But only for the elite.
Yes, aristocrats only. The focus was on Confucian classics, history, Chinese language, standard stuff for training administrators at the time.
But there was education beyond the capital, too.
Yeah, and this is interesting. They had private village schools called Gyeongdaeng. These were for unmarried youth, both aristocrats and commoners.
Oh, okay. So broader access there. What did they teach?
A mix, actually. Confucianism and history, like Taihak, but also archery. So literary and martial education.
Interesting. And what about their military? Was it well organized?
Seems so. 5 main armies in the capital, mostly cavalry led by the king, then provincial units under governors. They also had military colonies, soldiers who farmed, and aristocrats had their own private armies.
So they could muster a significant force.
Yeah, they could mobilize quite effectively. And their strategy was pretty sophisticated for the time.
Like what?
Active defense based on walled cities, using light cavalry for hit-and-run tactics, keeping strong reserves for counterattacks. They also seem to value intelligence gathering and even disinformation.
Sounds quite advanced. What about daily life and culture?
We get some fascinating glimpses.
Yeah.
They apparently loved singing and dancing, big communal gatherings at night, simple storage methods known for cleanliness, skilled alcohol brewers.
Anything you need.
Well, their kneeling posture was distinct, with one leg out. And they apparently ran more than walked as a common way of getting around.
Huh.
And here's a really enduring one. The tradition of mothers eating seaweed soup mayok after childbirth. That originated in Goguryeo.
No way. That's amazing. So geographically, where were they?